Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. Today I get to treat myself a little bit with a couple of throwback pours. One is just a small throwback, and the other is like a serious throwback. Okay, so throwback number one, since we've got this now hitting shelves this year, I've got a sample of Maker's Mark, the Cellar aged 2023 bottle. Okay, so the 2024 bottle just now starting to hit the shelves. People are getting pretty excited about it. I've seen some pretty rave reviews so far. I do have a sample of that coming in, so I'll give my full thoughts on it when it comes in. But in the meantime, I'm going to warm things up by trying last year's so that I can kind of compare the two. And I've got enough of this to do another side-by-side with the new one when it comes in as well, so we can get a real authentic side-by-side. But in the meantime, I wanted to try it out. That's going to be throwback pour number one. The other throwback pour, pause. The first one, you could probably still find, right? You're going to have to pay secondary, but if you're like, no, I really, really want that pour, you could probably still get your hands on one of those bottles of 2023's Cellar Age. The other one is a bottle that I highly doubt you're ever going to be able to get your hands on at this point, unless you got your hands on it the same way that my buddy Looter did, who sent in this sample, but it was gifted to him. This bottle was gifted to him, and this is the Thomas H. Handy, okay? So this is the 2016 Thomas H. Handy. This is BTAC, right? Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. It wasn't nearly as hard back then to get your hands on one of these bottles as it is today. So getting your hands on a Thomas H. Handy today is a serious challenge, unless you're willing to pay, you know, $500 to $600 in the secondary for that bottle, which, I mean, it depends on what something is worth to you, right? You're the consumer. I can't tell you whether you should or you shouldn't do that. It all depends on, you know, what kind of a collector you are and what you're looking for in a pour. But either way, I have had Thomas H. Handy before. I've never had a pour of it that's that old. Every pour I've had of Handy has blown me away, right? I've never had a bad Handy. Man, I really gotta think about the things I say before I say them, don't I? Well, ideally, children aren't watching this video anyways because it's booze related, so I'll talk about Handies all day, every day. Although I probably shouldn't because sometimes my in-laws watch. Anyways, let's kick things off with this Cellar Age, the 2023 Cellar Age. First, let me talk a little bit about this pour in particular. Like, what is it? How much did it cost? What's the mash? All that stuff. Let's talk about that real quick. So if you didn't know, Maker's Mark is owned by Beam Suntory, right? It's you know, the Jim Beam and Suntory Japanese whiskeys, that whole big umbrella. The proof on the Cellar Age from 2023 comes in at 115.7 proof. So pretty high up there in the proof department, not like astronomically high, but certainly not low. It is non-age stated, but I think 87% of this whiskey is 12 years old, and then 13% of it is 11 years old. So it's got some pretty decent age on it. It's been sitting down in the cellar for a while. And it's their standard 70% corn, 16% wheat, 14% malted barley in the mash bill. And the MSRP on the bottle is $150. So that's what people were paying for these. So what makes this different from their standard stuff, you might ask? So basically what they're doing is they're taking, you know, if you're not familiar with Maker's Mark, what they do is they, in their rick houses, they are known for rotating barrels throughout the warehouse. You know, a lot of times with most distillers, it's like, let's put this one on the top floor, and that's where it's going to stay until it's ready to be blended in or bottled or whatever. But usually barrels stay where you put them. Maker's Mark, they actually rotate their barrels throughout the warehouse over the years. It usually takes 5 to 6 years for their barrels to come of age, and they're trying to give them a variety of different temperature fluctuations and things like that, so that they're trying to create consistency with all of their barrels, regardless of where they start their journey. They all go through the same progression, roughly. So that's kind of how they do that. And with the Cellar Age, what they do is they do that standard aging, you know, usually about 6 years, but then they take those barrels and they throw them in the cellar for another 5 to 6 years after that. And the cellar is, it's really it's a cave, and it's this, if you've ever been, it's a really cool experience. But in this cave, then they age these barrels for another 5 to 6 years, and then they blend them to taste, and that's how you get the Cellar Aged series here. So the idea is that it slows down the sort of tannic maturation that happens with age on bourbons. In Kentucky's hot in the summers, it's cool in the winter, so there's a lot of in and out of the barrel, right? That whiskey's making a lot of trips in and out of the barrel, extracting a lot of tannins and sweet oak flavors as well. And they kind of want to slow that process down and let it just kind of mellow a bit in a damp, dark cellar. And you know, it's more similar to something like a Scotland, you know, kind of an aging process where it's not getting super hot anymore. You're in this cool environment for a long time. And that's what they're doing. So the idea is sort of just mellow it out a bit, which is really in line with their whole idea as Maker's Mark, you know, the weeded mash bills, trying to mellow it out a bit. Let's get in here on the nose. By the way, thanks Mikey for sending this in. I gotta say, the nose of this hits me with the very first thing I get is just a whole bunch of like allspice. I think of baking spices, I think of cinnamon, a little bit of nutmeg. It almost smells like a holiday release to me. It makes me think of, there's also this baked bread component, which intermingling with those baking spices really makes me think of coffee cake, which is great. There's even this sweet icing kind of a note, like not like a buttercream frosting. I mean, more like the real sugary frosting you would put on top of like a donut glaze, something like that, or confectionery sugary. But there's also just a ton of oak on this as well. Well seasoned oak. I like that nose quite a bit. Well, let's try it. Cheers. Man, a lot of what we were getting on the nose transfers to the palate, but then there's this addition that I was not ready for. I did not expect to get like a mixed berry note in here. And it is this mixed berries, like strawberries, blueberries, kind of you know, meshed into one blend here. This wild berry note right front and center on the front end of the palate. It does trail off and really leave a lot of room for the baking spices and the seasoned oak to shine later in the palate and on into the finish. But up front, I'm getting this fruitiness that I certainly was not expecting. But that coffee cake note, man, that feels spot on. Fresh baked bread notes alongside cinnamons and confectionery sugars, and this ribbon of oak that just sort of ties everything together from front to back. I gotta say, this is a really exceptional pour. I like that a lot. I think the only thing that would make me like this more is if I got maybe a little bit of like a butterscotch note in here to give me something to ground it a bit and make it feel more bourbony. Beyond that though, this is really, really good stuff. I think if I were to give this a score per my scale, I think I probably would have landed at like an 8.7. Yeah, that's really, really good. This is a bourbon in whom I am well pleased. Thanks again, Mikey. That's really good stuff. Okay, now we move on to a heavy flipping hitter right here. This is Thomas H. Handy, 2016. The proof on it, the proof is 132.4. So it's, you know, sniffing pretty close to hazmat. Very generous of you, Craig, to share your gifted bottle with me. I appreciate that. So I have never had a Buffalo Trace pour that old. I just haven't. Every pour I've ever had has been, you know, more recent than 2016. Because before 2016, I wasn't even into American whiskeys. I was really a Scotch guy at that point. I gotta say, the nose of this is blowing me away. I get this rich yellow fruit note, like your apricots, but I'm also getting just this big wave of oak that I really wasn't expecting, quite frankly. Like, it noses more like a double oaked rye to me. But those good mature rye notes aren't getting covered up by the oak at the same time. The oak is there sort of supporting it all and giving it more body, more framing. I get that mature yellow fruit, like I said, but I'm also getting this wonderful, sort of like a gin kind of a note. I think of like juniper. And this botanical, you know, sweet floral botanical note that comes alongside it, which I'm a big fan of floral on ryes. But man, is it also hot. Like, I don't want to go, because I'd be burning some nose hairs if I did that. After a little agitation here, there's this honey that's just kind of rising out of the glass. If I stick my schnoz down in there, I miss it. But if I back up a little bit and just kind of let it come to me, plenty of honey. Well, let's try it, huh? Cheers. Right up front, it's very floral. Those floral and honey notes, they're the first thing that really hit my palate. For something that's 132.4 proof, it didn't hit me like a truck, like I expected it to. It actually came in with some manners. And after it makes this really polite, gentle introduction with the floral and the honey, then I get this wave of like fresh cracked peppercorn. And then alongside that peppercorn eventually comes the seasoned oak. And it's your oak sugars that really come to the forefront alongside that cracked peppercorn. And the finish lasts forever. It's just hanging on. Peppery and sweet oak. And it's pretty late into the sip and kind of on into the finish that fruity yellow fruit component that you get with a lot of, you know, well mellowed out ryes, that does come along eventually. And it's surprising that it doesn't come along sooner. It comes along later. It's sort of trailing behind. But it also adds this wonderful complexity to what would otherwise just be an oaky finish. And that fruit kind of hangs out with the oak for a while, just to give it a little bit more, you know, balance. Friggin' yum, man. Just yum. So I think our score for this, it's really close to a 9. Not quite there. I feel like if we got some more of those brown sugary oak notes, and maybe if that fruit component was a little bit more uniform throughout the sip, it might just edge it, you know, up into the 9s. But for me, I think I'm going to land at an 8.9 for this sip. This is fantastic stuff. Like, holy cow, I'm so grateful to be sipping on this right now. You guys know I'm extremely stingy with my 9s. But that's friggin' delicious. Thanks again, Craig. I appreciate you, brother. Hey, if you want to meet cool people like Craig and like Mikey and get involved in our community, we have a Discord. There's a link in the description, totally free to join. Get eyes on it. See if you vibe with us, which is, you know, fine. If you don't, cool. If you're like, you know what, I kind of like these people are really cool. They're sharing samples of their own bottles and helping each other out as we hunt together, because hunting is hard as an individual person. I mean, you can waste a lot of time, like making the rounds to different stores and finding nothing that you want. But knowing what other people want and finding that on your shelf can open up more doors for you. You know, you can be like, hey, I didn't find anything I wanted, but I did find this bottle that I know so-and-so in the Discord has been hunting down. We can meet up, we can swap bottles, all that stuff, and maybe they have access to something that you want. Stuff like that. I mean, that's part of being a part of a community, is the camaraderie, the team effort that's behind it all, but also we do a lot of events like we're in the middle of a bottle share, which has been great. So it's like, think of show and tell, but for adults, and we're showing and telling about a bottle that we like, and we're letting everybody else try it, and it's a ton of fun. You get to know more about people's palates, what they enjoy, what they like, what they vibe with. We're making new connections. We also have other events on the horizon. We're toying with some ideas of doing some barrel picks as well, so there's a lot to get involved with. And if that sounds interesting to you, you can click the link in the description to our Patreon group, and the base tier is just $1. That's it. It's practically free. And then if you want to elevate from there, you totally can to get involved in our events. But anyways, thank you so much for watching the video today. If you enjoyed it, then leave a like in the video. This is the best free way to support the content here. If this isn't your first time by the channel, you know, maybe you've watched a couple of videos and you're like, I kind of like it here. Hey, kick your shoes off and stay a while. Hit the subscribe button. We'd love to see you around more often. And with that, we say, cheers, my friends. That's a good one. May you live richly and get better with age. And hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.